All right, everybody, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to continue with the discussion of the TMV indicator. In the first video, I talked about one of the tools that are tucked into the TMV indicator is the ADX. Now, they're barely using the ADX at all, and it really has some really nice values to it. So I say we take the ADX and we modify it so that we can better use it in our own TMV system. Before we modify it, we really got to understand what it is and what it's used for. The ADX is used to evaluate the strength of a trend. Now, the signal on this thing is a little odd because it always goes up when there's a trend. But if we're in a downtrending market and the downtrend is strong and the ADX is going up, it confuses people because they're used to something like the RSI, which goes up when the market goes up and goes down when the market goes down. The ADX, as long as the strength of the trend is strong, the ADX is going to go up. It doesn't care if that trend is a downtrend or an uptrend. As long as it's a strong trend, the ADX is going to go up, and that confuses people. One of the things that I think we want to do when we modify it is make it obvious that it's measuring the strength of a downtrend or that it's measuring the strength of an uptrend. That way the signals don't seem so confusing. Now, along the way, they came out with a modified ADX. We've got an ADXR, which is very similar to the regular ADX, only it's using a smoothed version. And so it's got this normalized plot to it. And then it has more lines, but it's still showing a rising ADX, even if the market is falling. As long as the strength of that trend is increasing, it's going to rise. And that, again, confuses people. So there's this version. And then there's one from LBR. The LBR is called a smart ADX, and it looks like this down here. And it has these color scales. But again, it's still going to go up even if the market is going down. As long as that downward moving market has a strong trend, this will go up. But this one's considered a smart version. And I got to say, it is a little more responsive in the grand scheme of things. And so rather than using a normal ADX or even the ADXR, I propose for the TMV that we use the LBR Smart ADX. Sounds kind of high tech, right? We get to call it whatever we want. So let's go ahead and bring up a regular chart and just kind of look at all these ADX. And if we go to a place like stockcharts.com and we look at the ADX, it'll give us these levels down below that we want to look for. Something like, is the ADX above 15? Is the ADX above 22? That kind of system. If we look at the ADX in the LBR, that smart ADX has those levels from stockcharts.com built into it. It has a 15 and it has a 30. And what it's doing is it's gauging whether or not the ADX is above that 15. That's the start of a trend. And then how strong that trend can get, because if it's above 30, it's considered the strongest that the trend can be, right? So if you're above 30 in an ADX signal, you've got a very strong market trend. The problem is we can have that signal even in a market that's going to the downside. So let's find a downside market and see this ADX going up in a downtrending market. Of course, while I'm looking for one, is not when we find one. So through all of this, when we had the market falling last year in that bear market, we had an ADX above 15. It was a strong trend to the downside. That just kind of highlights what I'm talking about when I say that this indicator, for newer traders, when they look at it, they get confused because they see a market going to the downside and they see that this is going up like we have right now. This thing has been pointing to the upside since mid-September, and we've been falling through that whole thing. But the trend has been getting stronger through that whole thing, right? So the ADX is just measuring the strength of the trend. It's not telling us that there's an uptrend. It's not telling us that there's a downtrend. It's just telling us how strong the trend is. So sure, we can use this, right? I think when we tuck this in to the TMV, we make just a few minor adjustments, like using the smart one here, that we'll get a more responsive, more useful TMV indicator. Just to save you from having to go back and look at what we spoke about in the first video, I say we go ahead and just go through that TMV real quick and take a look at what it talked about for the ADX. So it says trend direction is defined using the Keltner channels. We talked about that in video number 2. And then trend strength is indicated by the rising or the falling ADX. Now, to understand trend direction and a little bit of trend strength, the bar is painted in an uptick color when its ADX value is higher than the previous ADX value and when price is above the SMA. That's all that they're using it for. If we've got a rising ADX, so if the ADX now is higher than it was the last candle and price is above the SMA, they say we're in an uptrend. If price is below the SMA and we've got a rising ADX, then they'll say we've got a strong downtrend or an improving downtrend or a strengthening downtrend. But that's it. They're not using any ADX levels like 15 and 30. They're not using the smart ADX through the LBR. So I say, let's adjust things a little bit. We can define trend in ways better than just looking at whether or not price is above or below a simple moving average. And then we can increase our perception of that trend by first identifying if the ADX is above 15 or if it's above 30. And then we can check to see if we've got an increasing or a decreasing ADX. So that about wraps it up for this video. This is what I believe the changes we want to make to the TMV system. Now, of course, we're going to continue to go through each one of these tools. And then after we've made all of the decisions that we're going to make about how we're going to modify these tools, I will build an entirely new TMV indicator with all of these new adjustments put into it. And of course, share that with all of you. I appreciate your time, guys. I look forward to talking to you at the next video. And if you have any questions about anything that we've been discussing so far, put them in the comments below. I love the feedback. I love the questions. And really, that's what it's all about, all right? Helping you understand this tool better and building this tool with you so that when it's all done, you understand how to adjust it, modify it, maybe even rip the whole thing apart and rebuild it from scratch yourself, making changes that you want to make. See you at the next one.